Jerome Bruner began his education at Duke University in 1933. He graduated with a Bachelor's of Art in Psychology in 1937. From there, Bruner continued his education at Harvard, earning a Master's in Psychology in 1939 and his PhD in 1941. Bruner spent 4 years working as a social psychologist with the U.S. Army Intelligence during World War II. Following that, Bruner returned to Harvard University as a professor of psychology. While teaching at Harvard, Bruner, along with colleague George Miller, established the Center for Cognitive Studies. This was the first center designed around the study of the mind and how it processes information. Bruner is one person considered to be a founder of the constructivist theory of learning. He believed that learning is an active process and people learn best by problem solving, interpreting information, and making decisions. In the 1940s and 50s, Jerome Bruner became increasingly interested in the cognitive development of children. Bruner introduced his idea of the 3 stages of learning: inactive, iconic, and symbolic. These stages refer to the way information is learned and stored in the brain. Inactive learning is generally centered on children from birth to age 1, although it continues throughout life. In this stage, memories are created by movement or muscle memory. This stage can apply to learning to walk, reach for things, clap hands, or shake a rattle to produce a sound. In adults, activities such as sewing or playing a musical instrument could also fall into this category. Inactive memory refers to skills that are difficult to portray through words or pictures. Learning begins with action. The second stage, the iconic stage, begins at age 1 and continues through age 6. At this stage, learners obtain and store information using visual representation or images. Drawing a picture is a good example of this stage. The third stage is the symbolic stage. This stage begins at age 7 and continues through adulthood. In this stage, information is stored in the form of symbols or codes. Language is one example of a code. This stage offers the most flexibility for accessing, organizing, and recalling information. It allows for information to be manipulated, and it meshes the inactive and iconic with the symbolic so that relationships can easily be formed. Jerome Bruner's constructivist theory suggests that all of these stages should be used when introducing new material to learners, even adults. According to Bruner, this design, when implemented correctly, allows even young children to learn information formerly thought to be too complicated. In the later 1950s, Bruner introduced the concept of scaffolding. Scaffolding is the idea of a teacher providing the support and framework necessary to assist students in learning new skills or information. Essentially, this support allows students to learn materials and build skills based on their own ability level. Teachers who are scaffolding may provide students with guided practice, templates, resources, or coaching. This is designed to allow students to achieve while supporting them where there are gaps. In 1960, Jerome Bruner published his book, The Process of Education. This book was a landmark in education. It led to reform of educational policy in the U.S. and changed the teaching methods and perspectives of many teachers. It argued that children are active learners and are capable of developing their own knowledge. Bruner argued that schools are poorly constructed, relying on teachers to determine what information children can handle and which they can't. Bruner felt that this system deprived students of information until the teacher decided the student's cognitive function allowed for them to learn it. In his book, Bruner introduced his idea of spiral curriculum and readiness for learning. His readiness for learning theory implied that children could learn any subject at any age when adjusted for cognitive ability. His spiral curriculum idea added to that, saying that new information is built on a basic foundation, and the basics should be revisited repeatedly as more information is learned. With that, he believed young children could be introduced to complex concepts on a basic level so that as they matured cognitively, they could build on that foundation. A year later, in 1961, Bruner introduced his theory of discovery learning. He believed that students should design or construct their own learning by discovering their own coding system. Contrary to the behaviorist theory of the people that came before him, Bruner thought that students learned better by exploring and discovering than they did by being told information by a teacher. In Bruner's design, teachers are not presenters of information, but rather facilitators of student discovery. In the mid-1960s, Bruner was involved with a landmark curriculum development known as MAN, a course of study. This curriculum was anthropological and relied heavily on the idea of spiral curriculum, while encouraging students to think like social scientists. It was believed that if children learned about human behavior, they would be better adults. However, this curriculum was met with much controversy in the 1970s and never really took off. For a time during the 1970s, Bruner left Harvard and spent several years at Oxford. When he returned to Harvard in 1980, he continued to do research in developmental psychology. In 1991, Bruner was offered a position in the law department at New York University, and he continues to work there today. In 1996, Bruner published the book The Culture of Education. This book shows how Bruner's focus shifted from his previous works. At this point in his life, Bruner became critical of his own cognitive revolution from the 1960s. He began researching the role that historical and social context plays in a person's learning. He changed his focus to how a person's culture and past shape their mind and their perceptions of the world. Today, Bruner continues to teach law at NYU and still does research in the field of psychology. Today, October 1st, is Jerome Bruner's 99th birthday. Throughout his life, Bruner has published 15 books, including A Study of Thinking in 1956, The Process of Education in 1960, The Culture of Education in 1996, and Making Stories, Law, Literature, Life in 2003. He has also published more than 20 articles on topics in education and psychology. Throughout his career, Bruner has received many awards and honors. He has honorary doctorates from Yale, Columbia, the University of Berlin, the University of Rome, and others as well. He has earned many awards, including the International Balzan Prize, the SIBA Gold Medal for Distinguished Research, and the Distinguished Scientific Award of the American Psychological Association. I have a particular interest in the multiple intelligence theory developed by Howard Gardner. Jerome Bruner is one of the theorists who influenced Howard Gardner. I chose to research Jerome Bruner because I thought it would be interesting to learn more about his influence on instructional design and how that could have ultimately inspired Howard Gardner.